Untuk memulakan sidang hafal ini, saya dengan hormatnya menjemput Saudara Chin Huat untuk menyampaikan presentation. Chin Huat ialah jawatan kuasa pemandu. Mr. Chin Huat will give you a presentation of what it's all about and why we are here and why there should be any activities of Bersih 2. Silakan, please, Mr. Chin Huat. Dia menunggu komputer dia untuk bergerak. Okay. Okay, dah sampai. Okay.
Wow.
Phantom of the SPR, sorry, not opera, but of the SPR. If you want to stop a crime, you need to be able to think like a criminal. So this is what I will start my presentation with. You can rig an elections outrightly by resorting to vote buying, coercion, intimidation, and so on, ballot stuffing. All these things can happen with postal voting, for example, which my colleague, Dr. Ong Kian-ming, will continue on that part. It can also take place in the counting and tabulation process. But there's also rigging that could actually happen much earlier that would become less obvious, meaning that you don't have people who actually claim to be direct victim of such act. That's happened through electoral roll, through inclusions of non-voters, phantoms, exclusion of legitimate voters. Sometimes people don't realize that they themselves get excluded until very last minute. And thirdly, it's actually through redelineation of constituencies. Now what happened is that you look at it, if this is electoral in a constituency, phantoms would mean people who are illegals, who are not supposed to be in the electoral, but are illegally included. So what would happen is actually dilute the power of legitimate voters. Now on the other hand, you have people who get excluded from the electoral, who are supposed to be legitimate voters. Either they get omitted directly, deleted from the electoral and not found anywhere, or they get transferred to somewhere else, which they may not have any interest in. So that's what happened is disenfranchisement. That's more direct, and people would be more angrier, but because of that, you don't find that happening so frequently. The big problem would be this. The other problem that we will soon have to deal with is about redelineation. What happened here is that by altering the boundary and the size of the electorate, you can affect the power of their ballots. So this is, at the end of the day, would be a form of discrimination. If you have an oversized constituency, a discrimination to all voters. If you have an oversized constituency, it would be discrimination towards certain segments of the voters when they are grouped in such a way that make their votes less effective in the process. So this is the part that we're going to touch on is on phantoms. Now, what do you mean by phantoms? That's a word that we have to pick up when we read about Malaysian electoral politics. The original meaning is actually people who are dead, and then they still wake up from their grave and walk into polling booth the day elections come. They don't go back to greet their families, they walk straight into there and cast their vote and they go back home, back to their graveyard. Now, the extended meaning that what most Malaysians would take would cover non-resident voters. They're not dead people, but they simply were not there in their constituency, they don't live there, but their names appear there. It could mean also multiply registered voters, so that means that a person may be legitimate voters in one constituency, but appear again in another constituency illegitimately. It could be non-citizens. These are what you call instant noodle Malaysians. Yesterday you are still a foreigner, today you become Malaysian. Thirdly, non-existent. They may not actually exist at all in physical form. You don't find them, they merely exist on paper. Now this is what I'm going to show you later on. It's all about this cloning. How do you find phantoms? So we look at the symptoms. How do you tell that when the system is sick? You have direct symptoms like retention of the disease. You have many elderly people who are still alive on paper. That allow the chance of some people to take the opportunity to impersonate as the deceased voters and go and cast their vote. High number of voters registered under one address. In some extreme cases, you're talking a few hundred people under the same address. In the heart of Kuala Lumpur, you can have actually address without details like unit number for apartment. So you have 200-300 people under one roof, and you never know whether this is actually real or not. Unusual increase of voters, you're talking about a spike. Invalid addresses, you do find that in some electoral, some addresses were not there. They still exist on the electoral. Unidentified voters, other type of unidentified voters, people you go to the place, you can't find them. Highly similar voters, these are what I call possible cloning. And you can find that we have achieved so much in the cloning technology that will beat Korea and all other countries in the world. You have also high number of foreign-born voters. We are not saying that all foreign-born voters would be instant noodle Malaysians, but there's high possibility they can be. Indirect symptoms is that increased difficulty in voter verification. You have more common addresses, is what I mentioned. Sometimes that's happened by combining the smallest unit in the electoral called locality. So you end up having a locality, instead of covering one street, now we need to cover 20 streets. And that makes it impossible for you to actually go through to this street and ask for house number 3 whether this guy is there. So that's the opening. Now, this is a figure from the EC. In 2008 to 2011, you can see there's a constant increase of new voters. In 2011, the number EC has given to us is 1.13 million. The question is that, are they all real? Are these people all real? And what about the old voters as well? So these are some of the things that I'm going to show you. This is actually not new from us. This was actually from Merdeka Center. They presented it last Saturday. I'm not sure whether everyone catch this part. The very important information you look at it is that they did a voter verification audit, VRA. Merdeka Center and did this using a method called these two people. You look at the electoral, you go and ask whether this guy really exists. Now what they found was that valid addresses, 92% of the voters, only 92% of the voters live on valid addresses. The other 8% are not found. The addresses are not found, so you can't even locate them in the first place. Now that number, 92%, you go down, only 74% of them are recognized by either you find them or you find someone who knows about them. Now of those people then, only 31% were actually staying in the stated address. So the key point here is this, that if you times 92 and 74, you get 68%. Only 68% of the names of 1,200 randomly picked voters in that exercise were identified. There's been 32% of the voters, we do not know where they are, maybe because they live on some place that we cannot find on Earth. Maybe they're just not there. And if you go down and say who are the residents, there's only 21%. Now, what I'm going to show you is actually about cloning. This is the part that is tragic for the democratic process in Malaysia. We actually have 4 methods here. I'm reviewing the EC technology. This would not be the last press conference on this. On the weeks to come, we will do more press conferences revealing more shocking evidence. This is what we have at this stage. These are data provided to us by PAS Selangor. You look at this, the first way was actually to have the same OIC number, same address. Puan Soda binti Saleh and Teh Boon Kiat. 2 persons, they have the same OIC IC number. They live in the same place. Now, you know where this means Kawat, right? If it happened that only 2 of them were at home. Because one is a Muslim, one is a non-Muslim. Okay? You find them that they were in the same place. I'll give you another example. This is 2 persons. Okay? Madam Lakshima anak perempuan and Govinda Sami. She lives in number 6 Indian settlement in Taman Selayang. Someone by the name of B. Lila Bigay anak perempuan S. Batu Malay also live at the same address. They share the same OIC number, 7863005. Now you know well that the OIC number were only given to people who were born in up to 1979. Now you look at the date of birth from the new IC number is 490101, and this one is 7910 8 of October. They were born 30 years in distance, yet they share the same IC number. Either there's some fraud, or one of them was just simply a clone. This is the second method. You find the same name, slightly different new IC numbers. So you have, I think she's a madam. You have Madam Mok Sao Ying. She lived at 80 Jalan SS23 in SS2 PJ. Now, her IC number was 490912105732. In Ampang, near Telatai, you have another Madam Mok Sao Ying. She was born the same day. It's 1949, September 12th. On the same day, her IC number differs only by 400. Instead of 5732, become now 5302. Can anyone tell me that how much coincidence you need for two persons to be born on the same day with the same name and the IC number with just a difference of 400? This is Mr. Abu Bakar bin Ahmad. He's supposed to live on 101 Jalan Melati, Bandar Utama. He was supposed to be born on 66 January the 2nd. Now, there's another Abu Bakar bin Ahmad again. He was born also on 66 January, but on the 7th instead of on the 2nd. From the same state, he would live in Kelana Jaya. You look at the OIC number, they differ by 800,000. They were born with a distance of 5 days. The OIC number differ by 800,000. That means that within that 5 days, 800,000 people would have been born and they register themselves as Malaysian citizens. Anything can happen in this country, you know that. Okay, this is still case number 2. You have Fatih anak perempuan Rahman. She was born, supposed to be on 1946, June 14, lived in Shah Alam, but there's another Madam Mati anak perempuan Rahman as well at Kelana Jaya. Now that's also on the same day, but a different IC number. This is the third. Lim Sun Huat, similar situation. This is the third case. You have the same name, slightly different date of birth, and then a new IC number. So you find that they actually change this, and they actually get to the same place, similar situation. Same name, slightly different IC number, and so on. This is the fourth case, which my colleague Kevin would go in further. It's actually about postal voters. You have Mr. Ashar bin Ahmad, who is serving in the battalion, 1st Battalion of the regiment in Malay Regiment, Royal Malay Regiment, in Bandar Tun Razak. Same, with a different, one digit different, is T112303 in Bandar Tun Razak. In Wangsa Maju, you have another same person with the same name, now it's T1123052. So you have two soldiers. We can beef up our national defense so easily by just producing people. Same case, Shaifuddin bin Ismail, T1136016, here become T1136008, one in Bandar Tun Razak, one in Teluk Kemang. Now, how many clones are there out there? Type 1, we have found at least 560. Type 2, Type 3, Type 4, we have no idea yet. What you see is just a big tip of the iceberg. Because it's so complicated, we won't be able to give you a full answer and say how seriously flawed and fraudulent our process is. Now, where do they vote? The last election, the government was decided that if you go by the smallest number of constituencies, I think about 30,000 vote. All these things that happen again. These are the states where they have everywhere except in Perlis and Putrajaya. Who cloned them? You have only two possible suspects. One is the National Registration Department, who control the IC. The other one is the Election Commission, which register voters. We need to know if this is not fraud. Someone needs to come out, step forward, and show us the registration forms. Where were those forms? Who were the officers in charge in letting these people into our citizenship and electoral database? And when did we saw this happen? We were based on the cloning data was based on the last quarter electoral in 2011. That started from October, November, December, exactly when our PSC was working very hard and our members of the public worked very hard, took all the trouble to present the fact to the PSC in the hope that we would actually clean up the system. So when everyone was working on the PSC, the fraud took place behind the scene. What's wrong with the law? This was not addressed by PSC. Any road that once is certified cannot be challenged in court. And the PSC touches nothing on that. And there was also another regulation that which give the power to the Chief Registrar of Electors to alter the principal and supplementary electorals as they see fit. Neither did the PSC touch on that. So, shall the country's future be decided by that? Clothes. What then? I rest my case.
Saya menjemput Dr. Wong Chin Huat, seorang pensyarah daripada Monash University untuk memberi pandangan. Silakan. Dia juga akan membuat presentation kan.
I'm here as a lecturer from UCSI University. I'm actually embarking on a very extensive research project looking at the electoral roll to identify flaws in them, to try to assign responsibilities in terms of where these flaws, how these flaws got into the system, and finally to make recommendations to the authorities to try to rectify these flaws. So I'm not saying that all the flaws I'm showing are necessarily phantom voters, but I think they are serious enough that the EC as well as the National Registration Department, JPN, needs to be able to explain some of these very serious discrepancies. And this is just the tip of the iceberg, like what Chin Huat said. Today, I will only share about the problems I found up to this point about postal voters. Okay, these 5 problems: postal voters who are registered using their regular IC addresses as well. Okay, second, and I'll explain this problem when I show you the example. Second, spouses of police who are registered as postal voters because they are not eligible to be postal voters. And then the third one is an interesting case here: spouses of army or police voters who are of the same gender. Okay, I'm not making any remarks about same-sex marriage. I'm just showing that this kind of thing may happen in the context of postal voters. Army and postal voters who are above the retirement age. So we have police who actually work quite hard who are over 50 years old. New army and police postal voters who are above the recruitment age. That means these are people who are above the limit for new recruits into the police as well as the army. Okay. So I'll go to the first example first. Okay, this is an example of how the same voter is registered under both his tentera, T starts indicates that this person is in the army, tentera, as well as his regular civilian IC. Right, you can see this person Muhammad Firdaus bin Rashihan was registered in Rembau under his central address, and then under his regular IC, civilian IC was registered in Jempol. The second case involves Naik bin Muhammad. For these two cases, it was from Suku 2 and Suku 3, 2011. These cases were highlighted, and the EC actually deleted the civilian registration identities of these two particular voters. But if you think about it from a purely technical standpoint, there are over 200,000 postal voters who belong to the army, the police, and they all have codes starting with IC codes starting with T, G, I, and R. And they also have their civilian IC numbers as well. So it's actually possible for all 200,000 voters to be registered twice if, let's say, the EC is not diligent in looking out for this. Right? One of the problems, I think, about the PSC was that it just looked for duplicate IC. And this is new IC. So the old ICs that Chin Huat talked about, the duplicates didn't already appear in the analysis. But they didn't look at duplicate entries on the part of postal voters. Right? So this is actually a major, I think, shortcoming of the PSC, that this particular area was not examined in detail. And this is only quite a simple example of electoral fraud that is possible. Some of the other examples I show you are actually much more sophisticated. Okay. Okay, this is an example of a wife who used the husband's IC address to register as a postal voter. Right, so you can see the first part there, Muhammad Khairul Nizam bin Abdullah. We actually managed to find his civilian IC using MyEG, because JPN had already blocked off that possibility after after the many people, including political parties, used the JPA website to track down these dubious cases. Right? So what happened was, when we found that his IC address, we plugged it into the system, and we found that it belonged to his wife. We later verified in the electoral roll, Noryani binti Ahmad Sabri. Right? And you can see this is problematic because if you look at the card pengenalan, it ends with 3. So all the card pengenalan that ends with nombor ganjil should be male voters. Right? This one belongs to Noryana binti Ahmad Sabri, the wife. So you can see this is another example of how the civilian IC of the postal voter in the army or police can be used by another person. In this case, it may be the wife. In another case, it could be somebody else who just uses the IC address and details to get registered as a voter. And if, let's say, you really want to be devious, this person, Nolyani binti Ahmad Sabri, who also has her own IC number, can register again. And if you want to detect this kind of thing within the electoral roll, it actually is very, very difficult. It takes a lot of computing power and a lot of time and effort, something which the PSC didn't do as well. So this is the second example, wife who registered using the IC address of the husband. The third example is spouses of police voters who are also registered as postal voters. For those of you who don't know, only spouses of army personnel are eligible to be registered as postal voters. Right, so you can see here the IC spouse is identified in the electoral roll. Anything that starts with an R is a police voter. And these are spouses with the civilian IC addresses. You can see they are registered in different police camps in Cheras, in Taman Kupak. This is another hot seat, Hulu Langat, a very marginal seat. And these are cases where the spouse of police voters who are not eligible to be postal voters have been registered as postal voters. This is the third example. The fourth example, okay, this one is actually one very interesting case, whereby you had this person, Harisa binti Abdul Ghani, was registered as a postal voter because she is the spouse of Zaini binti Hamza, who is a army personnel. You can see the spouse there is IC starting with T. And this is in Setia Wangsa, they have a very big MINDEF candidate. But the problem is, if you look at this screenshot that we took earlier about Zaini binti Hamza, right? On the top, you can see her number, T110543. She is Zaini binti Hamza, it is perempuan, right? And then below, proses yang sedang dimohon, this person becomes Zaini bin Hamza. Is now a lelaki. So somehow the person had undergone a sex change during this period of time. Okay, what is more interesting is after this. Next. Okay, this is Harisa binti Abdul Ghani. It shows that she is registered as a civilian in MINDEF, which means that she is the spouse army personnel. Okay, next. So if you look at her now, she is now being transferred to another area because I think the spouse is also being transferred. Right? What is more interesting is next slide. Okay, this is Zaini binti Hamzah. Right? I showed you the earlier screenshot. She had become Zaini bin Hamzah. Right? Now she is Zaini bin Hamzah, but the jantina is now perempuan, whereas before it was lelaki. So it was a woman who became a man who became a woman but has a man's name. So I don't know what is the situation here, but I think the problem here is that you have both these situations where the identity or the gender of the postal voter in question here is suspect. You have quite a lot of cases that we found, at least 3 or 4, within MINDEF itself in City of Wangsa, where is a man married to a man, a woman married to a woman. Next. Okay, so this is a case of a retired army police who are above the retirement age. The retirement age for the police is 55. I think for the army, for the army is 55. For the police is 58. Right? So this person is, you can see RF 1304, Wan Rasidi, is registered in Lumut, again another marginal seat, as a police in Balai Police Lumut. And this person is born in 1900. So the person is a 111-year-old or 112-year-old police voter. Right? Again, this is just the tip of the iceberg. We found quite a number of other cases like that, where the police or army, they are above retirement age, but they are still within the postal ballot system. Okay, the last one I want to show is overage army recruits. The maximum age limit for army recruits is 30. Most of them come in about 18 to 25. Right? So in the quarterly updates for the EC, in the 3rd quarter of 2011, they actually said, look, this person has been cut off from the electoral roll under his civilian IC because dia sudah masuk tentera, has joined the army, right? But when we look at this person's age, we found that this person was actually age 42. And this person was taken out from the constituency, is Manong State Constituency under Kuala Kangsar, right? So this person was taken out, 42 years old, registered as a postal voter, even though he's above the age of army recruits. Next. And what was interesting is that in the next quarter, in the 4th quarter, we found the same person had been transferred to had been transferred to Jeli. And then in the same quarter itself, this person was taken out from Jeli and then moved to Ketere, which is another marginal parliamentary seat in the state of Kelantan. Right, so this person, not only is he over the age of recruitment for army, but he was taken out from Perak, a relatively safe seat in Kuala Kangsar, moved to Jeli in the next quarter, and then immediately in the same quarter, taken out from Jeli and put in Ketere. Right, so this, if let's say one wants to be really devious, it could be a way of trying to hide the movements of various postal voters who have been included into the system illegitimately. Right? So this is examples of people. This one, Abu Talib bin Ahmad, is born in 69. You can see he was in Jeli and then moved to Ketere. Right? So these are screenshots so you can see that I'm not just plucking the names out of thin air. Yeah. Next. Okay, so that's the end. These are just postal voters. There are other instances that we are trying to uncover. For example, yesterday we found that the oldest living voter in Malaysia was born in 1853. Right? So that shows that we have a very good healthcare system. I think this could be legitimate clerical errors on the part of JPN or on the part of SPR. But these are problems which were not addressed in the PSC. And I think as long as there is no commitment, public commitment on the part of JPN or SPR to try to rectify these problems, I think those problems will continue. And I applaud what Bersih is trying to do now, especially in terms of trying to ask, especially JPN, because a lot of the problems that JPN has, that SPR has, they will say that it's JPN's problem, it's not my problem. So I think JPN also needs to act to address many of these issues. Thanks.
Terima kasih.